Number 10. Crystal Paula Gonzalez. 45 miles, 72.4 kilometers from downtown Los Angeles, in California's San Gabriel Mountains, there's a popular hiking trail that ascends a peak called Mount Baldy. Before dawn one morning in early 2023, 56-year-old mother of four Crystal Paula Gonzalez set off for the summit. Someone had recently fallen off the trail and died, but as an experienced hiker, she was eager to conquer the notoriously difficult climb. Shortly after Gonzalez posted a video update telling her followers that the conditions were too treacherous and she was turning back, she slipped on ice and fell 700 feet, 213.4 meters down a steep hillside and into a tree. Bystanders did what little they could to help while waiting for emergency responders to arrive, but Gonzalez died from her injuries. A helicopter evacuation of her body was impossible due to the weather, and her body had to be carried down the 10,000-foot, 3,048 meters mountain. Number 9. Rebecca Bunting. 30-year-old urban explorer Rebecca Bunting was well known for her photos of abandoned places throughout the United States. But the hobby came with risks, and in 2018 a flash flood inundated an old storm drain in northeastern Philadelphia that she was snapping pictures of with her boyfriend. Rebecca vanished when she was swept away by the raging waters of nearby Pennypack Creek, and her boyfriend called 911. He was taken to the hospital for minor injuries while authorities began searching for the missing young woman. Rebecca's body was found the next day beneath a pile of discarded furniture that had been discarded into the creek. Members of the urbex photography community from all over the world were devastated by her death. It was only after the tragedy that her closest friends and family members learned that she inspired other photographers from all over the world. But they weren't surprised, given Rebecca's curiosity and the level of dedication she approached everything in her life with. And although her life was cut far too short, she lives on through her photos and is remembered for her talent and passion. Number 8. Peter Jalis. In June of 2022, 46-year-old American adventure racer Peter Jalis traveled to the wilderness of British Columbia to participate in a competition. After the race, he went pack rafting alone in Bugaboo Creek to explore the area. When he failed to return, his girlfriend reported his disappearance to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. A search and rescue team found Peter's pack raft, but he was nowhere in sight. The missing adventurer's friends, family, and fellow competitors initially held out hope that he was still alive, even after the search was suspended due to dangerously high water conditions. By the time a second search was finally launched in early October, more than 3 months after Jalis vanished, it was clear that something terrible had probably happened to him, or he wouldn't still be missing, and what had started as a rescue effort was now a recovery mission. His body was found in a log jam not far from where his raft had been discovered. Authorities launched an investigation into Peter's death, but the circumstances surrounding his disappearance were enough to indicate that he probably got into a deadly accident during his solo paddling trip. According to the non-profit American Whitewater, rafting alone and high water are common factors in fatal pack rafting accidents. And while Peter was an experienced athlete and outdoorsman, sometimes the forces of nature are too powerful for even the most skilled humans to overcome. Number 7. Jesse Capen. Legend holds that there's a rich gold mine hidden somewhere in the remote Superstition Mountains in the southwestern United States. There are different versions of the story about how, when, and by whom the mine was discovered, and where it is. Most versions claim that a German immigrant named Jacob Walt discovered a mine in Arizona sometime between the 1850s and the 1870s. No one has ever found the Lost Dutchman's gold mine, leading some to believe that it doesn't exist. But many others continue to look for it to this day, and some have died on their quest to locate it in the rugged and unforgiving desert wilderness. One of those unfortunate treasure seekers was a 35-year-old hotel worker from Denver named Jesse Capen, a quiet loner who was reportedly beyond obsessed with finding the lost mine. He kept his obsession a secret, and it wasn't until he vanished that his mom discovered evidence that he had searched for the treasure at least twice before and had amassed a collection of over 100 books about the Lost Dutchman's mine. During Jesse's third treasure hunting trip in late 2009, deputies from the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office found his abandoned campsite and jeep in a place called Tortilla Mountain. Numerous searches failed to turn up any sign of Jesse himself, but on the summit of Tortilla Mountain, the Superstition Search and Rescue Group found a note in a metal canister stating, "Jesse Capen was here December 4th, 2009. The searches continued for 3 years until the group discovered a backpack full of personal belongings on the mountain. They began searching the cliffs and found a human skeleton wedged in a 35-foot, 10.7 meters crevice, which was later positively identified as the remains of Jesse Capen. Superstition Search and Rescue Director Robert Cooper told Fox News that Capen's decision to search for the treasure alone and to not tell anyone exactly where he was going were what mostly led to his death. Cooper himself doesn't believe the legend of the Lost Dutchman's mine, but he's dedicated to finding treasure hunters who go missing and, in the worst cases, bringing some semblance of closure to their families. Capen's family declined to comment after the discovery of his body, but by then she had probably come to terms with the unfortunate likelihood that her son wouldn't be coming home alive. Number 6. Cody Roman. As the son of renowned American explorer Roman Dial, Cody Roman learned his wilderness survival skills from one of the best and eventually followed in his father's footsteps. The pair embarked on numerous adventures together before Cody ventured alone into the jungles of Central America in 2014. Several months into his solo trip, the younger Roman told Dial in an email that he was heading to Costa Rica's Osa Peninsula for 4 or 5 days. When 2 weeks passed without any word from his son, Dial became extremely worried. For nearly 2 years, he searched frantically for Roman, doing everything possible to raise public awareness while following leads and searching the jungle himself. Dial would later tell National Public Radio that the U.S. Embassy pursued leads that he didn't consider promising, including a rumor that Roman was seen walking along a trail with a drug dealer outside the area where he said he was going to be exploring. But Dial said he didn't consider it the embassy's responsibility to find his son, and he didn't seem surprised to be treated like what he described as a typical parent who didn't really know their child. A miner discovered Roman's body in 2016 in a canyon close to where Dial had camped several times during his search. After ruling out foul play, a forensic anthropologist concluded that the young man was most likely hit by a falling tree or bitten by a snake. One way or another, he was claimed by the wilderness. In his book, The Adventurer's Son, Dial described how the heartbreaking experience made him realize that he was selfish for some of the risky things he did during his 40 years as an outdoorsman. Losing his son made him painfully aware that when a thrill seeker dies, their loved ones pay the emotional price for the misadventure. Number 5. Jim Slauson. 73-year-old retiree Jim Slauson checked a major item off on his bucket list in 2020 when he participated in the Water Tribe Everglades Challenge, an annual expedition-style adventure race in the Gulf of Mexico that starts in Tampa, Florida and ends in the Keys. The 8-day event is unsupported, which means that there are no safety boats or support crews around to help the competitors, and the racers are not allowed to have anyone bring them supplies. According to the official website, only around 40% of participants finish each year. During the race, Slauson's 17-foot, 5.2 meters boat went off track from the planned route. His son alerted the Coast Guard, and a helicopter crew found the vessel capsized and with no sign of the sailor anywhere nearby. The search continued for several more days, but was eventually suspended, and Slauson was presumed lost at sea. The Coast Guard's initial announcement to the public described the adventurer as disoriented, but its exact reasons for doing so are unclear. Slauson's movement certainly suggested that something was wrong. An update posted to the event's website during the early morning hours on the day he went missing stated that his boat was way out in the Gulf and that it had been moving southwest for 6 hours at a speed of just 2 knots. Around the time Slauson vanished, other racers encountered 4 to 7 foot, 1.2 to 2.1 meters seas and 20 to 30 mile per hour, 32 to 48 kilometer per hour winds, which are considered rough conditions for a small sailboat. Although he was never found, it's probably safe to assume that his vessel was overpowered by the turbulent waves. Number 4. Fenn Treasure Hunters. Forrest Fenn was an eccentric multi-millionaire who made his fortune as an art dealer in Santa Fe, New Mexico, after serving in the Vietnam War. After being diagnosed with terminal cancer in 1988, he buried a chest full of treasures at a secret location in the Rocky Mountains, with plans to challenge members of the public to find it. He beat the disease, and it wasn't until 2010 that he mentioned the treasure's existence in a self-published memoir, along with some cryptic clues hinting at its whereabouts. A treasure hunting frenzy ensued over the next decade as fortune seekers attempted to locate the hidden cache of valuables, which, according to Fenn, included gold nuggets, rare coins, gemstones, and jewelry. Blinded by the fantasy of becoming rich overnight, many people risked their safety and broke laws. In early 2016, 54-year-old Randy Bilyeu set out to find the treasure, going against Fenn's advice not to look for it in the winter. After not hearing from him for over a week, a concerned friend alerted Bilyeu's ex-wife, who filed a missing persons report. His raft and dog were found the next day, but he was nowhere to be seen. When his body was finally found 6 months later, his ex-wife released a statement saying that she believed Randy died searching for something that doesn't even exist. She was one of many people who believed the Fenn treasure was a hoax, and these suspicions only increased as years went by without it being found. In the meantime, park authorities became exasperated by the crazed treasure hunters, and at one point they implored Fenn to end the search, but it continued, and so did the tragedies and arrests. At least 5 deaths have been linked to searches for the Fenn treasure. In 2017, a pastor from Grand Junction, Colorado, named Paris Wallace vanished after telling loved ones about his quest. Police found his car abandoned on a roadside near a torn rope, matching the contents listed on a receipt that was left in the vehicle. His body was found 5 to 7 miles, 8 to 11.3 kilometers downstream. Just weeks earlier, 53-year-old Jeff Murphy had fallen to his death while searching for the treasure in Yellowstone National Park. His body was recovered from a riverbank shortly after he disappeared, but authorities withheld details surrounding the circumstances of his death until the following year. 31-year-old Eric Ashby also went missing that summer when the raft he was traveling in with some friends overturned. His body was found a month later. The 5th and final death of a Fenn treasure seeker happened in early 2020 when 53-year-old Michael Wayne Sexton and a friend rented snowmobiles and then continued their search on foot. After realizing they were in a bad situation, they tried walking far enough to get a cell phone signal and call for help, but they became trapped in deep snow. They were stuck for 4 days before rescuers arrived. By then, Sexton was dead, but his friend survived. Just a month earlier, the same pair had ended up in a similar situation and had to be rescued. Apparently, they didn't learn their lesson, and it unfortunately came at the cost of one of their lives. The Fenn treasure was found later that year, much to the disappointment of those who had hoped to get their hands on it, and much to the relief of park officials who were more than ready for the crazed search to end. Number 3. Steve Fawcett. Retired commodities trader Steve Fawcett used some of his 8-figure fortune to set world records, circumnavigating the globe non-stop as a solo balloonist, a sailor, and a fixed-wing aircraft pilot. He held dozens of other records as an adventurer and was recognized for his achievements by numerous prestigious groups throughout the world, including America's National Aviation Hall of Fame, the Royal Aero Club of the United Kingdom, and the world's governing body of air sports, the Fédération Aéronautique Internationale. Sadly, no amount of flying experience and expertise could eliminate the dangers of Fawcett's thrill-seeking lifestyle. Early one morning in 2007, he took off from a private airstrip in Nevada in a single-engine 2-seater plane and failed to return by noon as planned. He filed no flight plan, which he wasn't required to do, and no location signal had been received from the plane, complicating the search for his whereabouts. Based on where they believed Fawcett would have been flying and the fact that he took off with 5 hours worth of fuel, authorities began scouring the rugged wilderness of the Nevada-California border. After several weeks of looking for Fawcett with no luck, the efforts were called off. During the search, 8 other previously undiscovered crash sites were found, including some that were decades old, but none were of Fawcett's plane. Due to the urgency of finding Fawcett, the immediate efforts to identify the wrecks were minimal. It's been speculated that one of the planes may belong to Charles Clifford Ogle, a California businessman and developer who disappeared during a solo flight in 1964. Fawcett's fate remains a mystery to this day. All things considered, it's probably safe to assume that he got into an unfortunate wreck and didn't survive. Several months after he disappeared, his wife Peggy petitioned the court to have the 63-year-old legally declared dead. A Chicago judge granted her wish in early 2008, bringing a sad but not entirely unexpected conclusion to the case. Number 2. Keith Davis. Seeking an adventurous career, marine biologist Keith Davis became a fisheries observer, which involved spending months at a time on fishing vessels while collecting scientific data and monitoring the boat's activities. In addition to the dangers of rough seas, it came with other risks. Fisheries observers live and work among the crew, but are required to report any illegal activity they see, which can lead to suspicions and tensions on board, and they have extremely limited contact with the mainland. If a fisheries observer thought they were in danger, it might be difficult to call for help, especially if the captain and crew don't want them to be helped. When Davis vanished during a routine voyage off the Ecuadorian coast in 2015, his friends and family instantly suspected foul play. Carsten von Hoeslen, who has worked as a marine hostage and hijacking negotiator, independently investigated the case and shared his findings with Hackeye magazine. On Davis's laptop, he found a handful of photos that looked like Davis had tried to take them without anyone noticing. It seemed as though he had been trying to document suspected crimes. The photos were taken just days before Davis disappeared, and in recent months he had become increasingly frustrated with the lawlessness he claimed to observe at sea. Some of the pictures showed 2 women, which was odd to begin with because women rarely work on tuna fishing boats. They weren't listed as crew members, nor were they dressed in the type of work attire one might expect to see on a commercial fishing vessel. Davis also photographed 2 Chinese men who were picked up from another ship belonging to the same Taiwanese company that owned the vessel he was on. The crew list indicated that the men boarded the ship 2 days apart, but Davis's photos showed them boarding at the same time. Other footage and photos showed ships packed full with extra people, including men sleeping on hallway floors. Von Hoeslen suspected that the ships Davis worked on were involved in human trafficking or smuggling. But because the ship was Panamanian flagged, the official investigation fell under Panama's jurisdiction. The probe concluded that Davis must have fallen overboard, despite the seas being calm when he went missing. Investigators failed to look nearly as deeply into the case as von Hoeslen, and he failed to convince U.S. authorities, where Davis is from, to investigate. When he went to Ecuador to try getting anyone who knows more about what happened to talk, he hit a stone wall. The general story claims that there's no human trafficking or smuggling aboard fishing vessels, and Davis died in a tragic accident, possibly because he was drunk and lost his balance. Others seem to know more than they were saying, but either couldn't or wouldn't go into detail. Von Hoeslen and many others remain convinced that Davis was murdered, but it seems as though proving it will be next to impossible. One of the dark and disturbing advantages that come along with suspicious deaths at sea and the complicated nature of international maritime law. Number 1. Jan Bordon. When the 27-year-old French backpacker named Jan Bordon suddenly fell out of touch during a trip to Egypt in 2021, his loved ones suspected that he was being detained by authorities. As time wore on, the young man's family grew increasingly concerned. They desperately prodded authorities for answers, but were hit with a wall of silence. During Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi's visit to Paris the following year, they went public with their pleas, holding up signs asking about Bordon's whereabouts as the leader's motorcade rolled by in the street. Several weeks later, in August of 2022, Bordon called his sister from the French consulate in Cairo. That same day, Egyptian state security services announced plans to facilitate his return to Paris, but they declined to reveal any details about the nature of his year-long disappearance. The mysterious case came amid a disturbing uptick in recent years of unexplained disappearances at the hands of Egyptian authorities. In 2011, a series of uprisings against police brutality and government corruption led to a change in leadership and some increased freedoms for civilians. But the changes were limited and short-lived, and since the beginning of El-Sisi's presidency in 2014, things have mostly gone back to the way they were before the 2011 revolution. Most of the people who were detained by authorities are Egyptian citizens, but the cryptic nature of Bordon's disappearance and his sudden unexplained return suggest that he may have been in custody during his time missing. Thanks for watching. Would you rather spend 2 weeks lost in the wilderness relying on your own knowledge and skills to survive, or witness deeply concerning illegal activity that you weren't supposed to see in the middle of the ocean after paying a suspiciously low price to travel aboard a transatlantic cargo vessel? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time. Bye.